Well, hi, friends. Welcome back to How to Eat an Elephant. I am your host, Ian, joined by Emily and Megan as ever. And we are all feeling a little juvenile this morning. And who could blame us? Because we have just entered what I think is the single thing you hear the most as someone who is approaching this elephant of a book. Is wait until you get to the Paris sewers.
We've been looking forward to this episode for a long time.
I mean, is that what we've been doing?
Well, we have. We've been expecting a big long passage, right? That goes on and on, a la Tolstoy and Reflections on the Philosophy of History. Like, you know, some like really burdensome passage in terms of length.
Right. And it wasn't that long, was it?
Not at all. No. In fact,
no, but it was pungent.
Ian and I, we finished it, our reading, and we looked at each other and we're like, this is beautiful, like, and so powerful and moving. Hold on. So I think that our listeners would agree that Megan is the most emotionally intelligent, like sensitive and mature reader on this podcast.
That's very sweet of you. All right.
So Ian and I finished and we're like, wow, like so powerful. Like the metaphor is absolutely beautiful. Like, I don't understand why people complain about this passage because it's so memorable, and how good it is and like whatever. And then I get a text from Megan, who on her reflections of reading, and basically amounts to poop.
I couldn't get over it, you guys.
I felt like that was what I would normally do, so it was a really strange role reversal.
I really was. I was sitting on my back patio of a summer evening. I was reading. I was doing something erudite. I was reading Hugo, and I was laughing like a junior high boy about poop jokes. I mean, I could not get over it. Oh man,
he finds so many creative ways to talk about pooping butts in this section.
I mean, it goes from lines like fetid streams of subterranean slime, and you're like, all right, he's reaching, to phrases like this: leakage is the word. Europe is ruining herself in this way by exhaustion. All I can think of is dysentery.
Oh my goodness. Yep. There was lots of being almost drowned in giant pools of excrement in this particular section. But I do think it's worth talking about the metaphor. I thought it was fascinating. So it kind of comes to us in two sections, right? And the first one's shorter than the second one. The first one is actually a discussion of the sewers themselves, the construction thereof, and a critique of how Paris in particular, but really going all the way back to Rome, how large cities and the heart of culture has decided to reject one of its most powerful resources. And his assertion, which makes some sense, his assertion is that the collective excrement of a city is the most effective fertilizer that we are aware of, in his own era, at least. And so if you were basically humble enough as humanity to recognize and embrace the power of this dark side of your humanity, you could actually bring a new level of flourishing to your society. Fertilize the fields with the product of the city and everything will grow. But instead, in our arrogance, we reject this side of our humanity and we flush it away.
It's shameful.
It's shameful. It's dark. And so we don't want to look at it. We don't want to think about it. And so we flush it away, which has two effects. First of all, it means that the plane on which the city sits is not fertile. And secondly, it means that the water sources are all polluted, because we're flushing it into the streams and rivers that are supposed to be supplying our city with water. So it was an interesting argument, and I think it does address human nature from Hugo's perspective. Did you guys pick that up as well?
Oh yeah.
I'm stomping down my immaturity here. I don't think there's a way. There's not a way to avoid associating the sewers with a concept of humanity because of all of the anatomical terms that he uses to describe it.
Did you have to look up any words, Megan?
I sure did. The word cloaca, that's a new one for me. It's a new one.
What are its two meanings?
Well, I mean, one of them is sewer,
Yeah.
and the other one is
Is it sphincter? A sphincter says
yeah.
what?
Yep, that's the one. Which makes lines like this just really funny. Each hiccup of our cloaca costs us 1,000 francs. Sorry. Okay, all right. I'm gonna be grown up now.
Ooh, goodness.
No, you made a beautiful
gracious.
philosophical point. I just okay, it's out of my system.
I mean, both of them have to exist. Both of them have to exist. The other thing I thought that was really interesting and philosophically powerful is when he gives us a list of monarchs, leaders, and more or less talks about the heroism of the time and money that they spend shoring up and or extending the sewers.
Yeah, I was confused about that parallelism because on the one hand, he is saying that the sewers are a bad thing because of the way that they prevent France from flourishing. And yet all this exploration, this explorer that he talks about, it starts with a B.
Bruneseau or something.
Yeah. Bruneseau. He really elevates him to hero and talks at the end of this chapter, this first chapter for today, talks about him as leading a revolution of sorts.
Yes.
So I was a little confused about his dual attitude towards it. I mean, he's had doubling attitudes towards a lot of things. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised anymore, but I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
well, he talks about sorry.
No, go ahead, Megan.
When the sewers flood or overflow, he describes it like an insurrection, an attempt to bring reality to the surface and clamor for attention in things that are significant. And then the government ignores them yet again and says it's better to drive it away. In that way, it seems like Bruneseau is a hero of a revolution of sorts because he's daring to go and look at what's real under the city.
Yep.
There's a big, long description about the sewer telling all or being, I think he says something like it's the conscience of the city. All things come together in a state that's more than brotherhood. It's intimacy. And it's cynical and it's real and it's unclean. And so it displeases us. But first and foremost, it is telling the truth about the nature of man. And so Bruneseau, brave enough to go and see the real state and make a map of the real state of humanity. Of course, he's elevated to a hero status. Yeah, he's the opposite of someone who engages in this new word I learned, tergiversation. Tergiversation. Did you guys notice
I thought
this
that
word?
was a made up word, but
it just means equivocation, right?
The difference between us as readers is that I didn't look it up. I just assumed that it was made up and moved on.
You were like, so Hugo just made up a word.
Fake word, Hugo. And I moved on. Yeah.
Okay, well, it's not a made up word. It means making statements that deliberately hide the truth. So obfuscation is basically what it means. And maybe Bruneseau is a hero because he does not engage in tergiversation.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense within the larger scope of his metaphor that he wants France to be making use of its shameful elements instead of ignoring them. And the explorer, the one who's willing to look it in the face, is the hero of this section.
Yeah, but that does lead me down a different path slightly because on the one hand, the creation of the sewer is a refusal to look at it, is an impulse to flush it all away. But then the people that are improving the sewer, and here's an important bit, the people that are making it straight, that are vaulting its caverns, that are what's the word I'm looking for? That are making it more logical under there and mapping it and making it easier to get around and easier to maintain, are talked about as heroes. It makes me think that he's using the sewers and the growth of the sewer over time in the same sentence as talking about the way that the ideological principles of revolution and of France particularly are improving in a fundamental way the human heart and mind, right? Like he's always talking about education, the light, and how that's going to solve something, how that's actually going to usher humanity into a new golden era of brotherhood and peace. And this seems to me to be at odds with the flip side of that coin, with the looking at the darkness of human nature and making use of it. He's at cross purposes with himself when he has this conversation. It takes me back to the previous one that we had last week, where I was raging at his pot shots at the American across the pond, right? Pot shots across the pond. And one of the things that I thought of after we were done is there's a fundamental difference between the revolution in America and the revolution in France. And that difference is the French tried to kill God as an idea. Their entire revolution was founded on the concept of a new religion of the state rather than religious conviction with regard to the Christian God. And he seems to want to have his cake and eat it too on this issue. And I think it's directly tied to this, what we're taking up today, with the idea of human brokenness and suffering being the key to something. And he wants to talk about God. He wants Jean Valjean and his character and all of the true and beautiful and good things about Jean Valjean to come down to an encounter with God that is mediated through his own suffering and his own brokenness. But then he wants to turn around and talk about France and talk about the state and talk about how what really needs to happen is light needs to come in, and that enlightenment will drive away brokenness, will drive away suffering, will solve the problem. And I don't know that you can say both of those things at the same time and not be in some sort of a contradiction. What do you guys think about that?
Do you mean, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you mean that Enlightenment ideas lead to humanism? Yep. The assumption that a man can perfect himself by a pursuit of the light.
Yeah.
And humanism is in direct contradiction with Christianity?
Yes. Better said than I said it. Thank you for clarifying. Yeah, I do think that's what's going on. He's a humanist, but he also seems to want to be a man of faith.
Yeah.
And I don't know how well those ideas interact with each other.
Well, I don't either. And again, the way that it came across to me as I was reading is every time he stops and gives us a sermon or a philosophical lecture, the tension of those ideas rankles. But every time he's presenting a fictional account and describing the way that a human being interacts in the world and the struggles he has in his soul, it doesn't bother me, because there are truths in tension down here in the world, in the human experience. And there are things that we can't grasp. And faith looks a lot like a question mark a lot of the time. So
rather than a certainty.
If he would stick to fiction, I think that that duality wouldn't bother me so much. But I agree with you. It bothers me in the philosophical sections as well. He's got two different philosophies that may not jive. But when he's describing Jean Valjean looking for God in the darkness, I identify.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like we said, there are two sections here that are both the sewers. The first one is the description of how it gets built and how it's maintained over years and years, and the shame that it is that we're wasting all of this filth, which I think is really funny. But then we immediately jump back into plot, and Valjean is interacting with the sewers himself. And I thought it was more effective, actually.
Well, I think that his sewers metaphor is the most powerful thing that he's done so far to communicate this point. I actually don't necessarily, I mean, I see what you're saying about the strengthening of the sewers being some kind of enlightenment project, but I'm not sure. I didn't really pick that up. Like, I think that there's something about this image that is perfect, actually, for his purposes, or maybe like for the purposes that that jive with Jean Valjean. But
how so, Emily?
Well, this idea that it's the shameful bits, it's the brokenness of humanity that is going to lead to God, or that needs to, I don't know. I want to keep unpacking this image because I think it's a really good one. I loved this line on 1258 where he talks about everything that can be found in the sewer and how it's all jumbled together.
Oh yeah, that was great.
And he says, it's more than brotherhood. It is closest intimacy. All that used to be painted is besmirched. The last veil is rent. A sewer is a cynic. It tells all. This sincerity of uncleanness pleases us, and it is a relief to the soul. So there's a sense in which it's the great leveler, like all the stratifications of society are broken down in the sewer, and the result is not some kind of elevated, like, humanist Ubermensch, but is instead like the lowest common denominator
Mhm.
between men.
Yeah.
And that's just such a good starting point to talk about at least the theological ideas that he wants to talk about.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely see that. Also, I don't know if this is right, but it felt to me like his social gospel that he's constantly trying to offer us is at odds with that picture that you just gave us, Emily. I think that that is something that drives him thematically, and he wants to present that picture. It's the perfect image or metaphor for his project. But he also can't help but point a finger at the government and say, by the way, there was a giant opening in this sewer for 100 years, and it was giving everybody fever, and you should have fixed this. And he even offers a plan at one point to clean the sewers and erase the problem.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of contradiction in the way that he talks about the sewers, but putting it the way that you did, I really see that you're right. Thematically, it's a picture and an image that's really powerful. This hub of the wheel that he's been talking about of society has a kernel of something important in it.
Yeah, and I do and this just might be the nature of, I don't know if it's romanticism as an expression of art, but the same thing happened in War and Peace. There were two conversations going along parallel. One of them was thematic and theological, and the other one was thematic and political.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I think it's actually a valid thing as an author to note that the lived human experience of an individual is different and appears to us down here in our limited perspective to operate on different rules than the experience of the masses, the experience of the body politic. And so I don't know that, I mean, I agree with you, Megan, that I see some contradiction. I see some tension. It doesn't work out neatly, but who are we to expect that it should work out neatly if
That's
if
not
what he's trying to
our
do
experience
is
in life. Things aren't neat and
he's
tidy in
trying to
life. Yeah.
represent our experience of life. So maybe there's room for that kind of contradiction.
And it's a bunch of poopy.
It's a bunch of poopy.
Life is a bunch of poopy. But also that theme that we've been tracing all the way through of a man's darkest moment is a moment where God is not absent. Maybe he's not speaking, but he's very, very close and very, very present. He's a witness. I'm thinking of Fantine. I'm thinking of just about every character. Eponine, any character that's representative of as low as a man can sink, God is present. And here in the sewer scene, it's named in a really strong way.
Yeah.
Jean Valjean basically steps down into a grave, and it's described like a death and rebirth. The entire journey through the sewers is a death and rebirth. But to frame all of it, the first thing that we're told about this experience is that he finds celestial goodness taking him by treachery. There's an ambush of providence down in the sewers. So here, underneath the city of Paris, lower than we've even ever been before, that's where providence is going to ambush you in the best way. Yeah. I just think that is so profound.
And I wonder if it is made even more profound by the fact that he thinks the whole thing was a giant human screw up.
Yeah.
A mislocation of resources or a bad.
I love that.
That jives with the fact that it's Thénardier who ends up rescuing Jean Valjean in the end by letting him out the gate.
And who doesn't think he is rescuing him. He thinks what he's doing is offering a pacifying gift to Javert so that he can get away scot-free.
Right. So I don't know. I don't want to. I agree with everything that you're saying, especially as it pertains to last section reading. So I do want to say that
on air.
It's a tricky business. I mean, he says a lot of words. There are just lots of words in this book, man.
And he says the same word a lot of times.
Cloaca. So in terms of the actual plot, there's not a ton to go over, right? I mean, he takes Marius, who is on the brink of death, apparently, and whom he hates. Did you guys notice that?
Oh man, that was such a powerful moment.
Yeah.
It's incredible when he gets to a stopping place and lays him down to rest for a minute. And he's gentle and kind with him. He cleans his face off and he tears up his own shirt to make bandages for him, and then looks down on him with this look of hatred. And you just think, what? kind of man are we dealing with here?
Yeah.
Oh man. The big long, I don't want to, Ian, you're in charge. You're leading us, our fearless leader, but there is a big long section about quicksand
Yeah.
slowly devouring you. That was so, I mean, I couldn't look away. It was like watching a train wreck. It was terrifying and horrible. And then Jean Valjean carries Marius on his shoulders through muck like that, that's trying to eat him alive, holding him over his head as he drowns
Yeah.
in poop. You guys, whoa. I mean, this is cinematic.
It is. Oh yeah, it's so well written. And I also thought as we're talking about metaphors, that quicksand image was served a dual purpose. I mean, it's I think it's the bitterness and the grime of society, of this world that he's painted for us, where the rich get richer and the poor stay poor, and where Paris is devouring itself. But it's also an image for hatred and what hatred does to the human soul.
Oh yeah,
wow, I didn't see that.
My eyes just fell on this quote from the previous chapter again, where he's talking about the different people who have gone down to explore the sewers. And he says, there are no bulletins for these acts of bravery, more useful, however, than the stupid slaughter of the battlefield. So we've just been on the barricades, and there was all this glorious language about revolution, even though he was looking at it in the face and acknowledging its horrors. There was like this language of glory. And yet here, there's something more noble about what's going on. And it's particularized by Jean Valjean, and his heroism in the quicksand with Marius. But I thought that was, I don't know, that's really powerful.
Yeah. I'm thinking more about your comment too, Ian, that this might be a metaphor for what hatred or cynicism or all the things that come about because of the darkness in society, what that can do to your heart and your mind. They suck you down and eat you alive. And one of his lines, if that's true, if that image is true, this line means more. He says, the mire supports weight more or less according to its greater or lesser density. A child escapes where a man is lost.
Yeah.
First law of safety is to divest yourself of every kind of burden. So of course, what I was thinking is, okay, so it's impressive then that Jean Valjean doesn't try to save himself by throwing Marius, right? I need way less. So get rid of this dead weight, literally.
Yeah.
But if this is an image for hatred, the comment about the child escaping where the man would die is really profound. It made me think of Gavroche and all of the gamins in the story, all the children who do manage to maintain some kind of balance and hope and joy in the face of their suffering that the adults around them couldn't possibly hope to grasp onto.
Yeah, I love that. I also think it makes me think of Enjolras. The men of the barricade are boys. They're all boys. And the way that Valjean interacts with them is really compelling, right? He sympathizes, he joins them, he defends them, but he does not kill.
Yeah.
And there's something of the child in Valjean. And if it's children that escape in this situation, he does by the skin of his teeth.
Well,
but he does.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, me too. And maybe it's even particularly because he doesn't let go of Marius that the irony is, if he had let go of Marius, he wouldn't have made it.
If he had acted like an adult.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like, I mean, it's like a walking on water kind of scene.
Yep.
Slogging through water. Yeah.
Water.
Did you notice he kept using the word water? It was a little bit like water and some other stuff. He also didn't talk enough about the smell. I just really don't think he did justice to the asphyxiation element of the
he did use the word asphyxiation a bunch, but I thought it was funny that the first time the smell really came up was Thénardier saying, you don't smell very good. And those are the exact words. That's a quotation. You don't smell very good.
Understatement at its finest.
Yeah, I mean, I apologize for cursing, but no shit. You know what I mean?
I think of all of the episodes to drop that word, this is the one where it belongs. I mean, we've said cloaca, okay? I
just want to slap him. I just want to slap Thénardier in this moment. Oh, real? Oh, I don't smell very good. Oh, is that what it is? I'm so covered in poop that no one recognizes me. Of course I don't smell very good.
Oh,
Okay, but
man.
speaking of that, though, let's jump to the
Yes,
next
okay,
plot
yes.
point. So Valjean escapes the sewer because of a deal with Thénardier that he doesn't really understand himself, right? He doesn't know what it is that Thénardier is doing, which is delivering him into the hands of Javert. He exits. There's this moment where the open air and the light reminds
The
him of God,
stars.
and he exults in his soul, and then the law comes down on him with force. There is Javert, who doesn't recognize him because he's so covered in filth. And Javert says, "Who are you?" And his first impulse is, "I am Jean Valjean." This honesty.
2, 4, 6, so
Right, exactly. But like,
No,
let's
I
not,
love that,
let's
though,
not
Ian.
brush
Yes.
over it.
Yeah.
The
No, I agree.
immediate honesty. It is as though he is yet again. How many times has he done this? Just throwing himself into the arms of Providence and saying,
Mhm.
"It will go with me like God wants it to. Here we are. Here I am."
Yep.
Which is just incredible.
And
He
also
seems-
perhaps a result of being in the sewers. I mean, if those are metaphorically a representation of as the reality of humanity and
Mhm.
and the good that's to be found, the relief or consolation, he said,
Yep.
in the heart of man, in living in that reality. Here, Jean Valjean is the product of that consolation.
Yeah.
He's been
Yep.
spit out by it just now. So of course he's going to tell the truth.
Yeah.
Even in the plot, he's kind of at his lowest point. He's saving Marius, who he knows is
Gonna steal his daughter.
Yeah, because that's going to abandon him for Marius, and so there's nothing left for him. And it's when the characters have nothing left for them that their true personhood comes out. And for Jean Valjean, it's sacrificing himself. He's going to allow Javert to take him finally because Cosette is moving on.
Yeah. So let's talk Javert.
Yeah.
So there's this whole meditation when we watch Thénardier, whom we don't know is Thénardier yet, head for the sewer and elude his pursuer. There's this whole meditation on how noble the police force of Paris is. Even when there's an uprising, they don't let go of their normal duties, right? And in order to prove this, he takes Javert, who has just believed for sure that he was dead. He's been captured as a spy by the boys on the barricade. He's
He
been
needs
in
a day
prison
off.
for a whole day. And he's and then he's been at Valjean's mercy, and Valjean has let him go. And his immediate response is to go back to work. And now
Double down.
he's tracking some random miscreant down the shore of the river. Just, I mean, an insane level of dedication to duty.
You keep saying duty.
I know.
Duty.
I was wondering when
All right.
someone was going to notice.
I was trying to not be a junior high kid, but I'll go back.
Yeah,
I'm
let's go
always
back.
pretty close.
What kind of duty is it? Duty. I think it's really interesting to watch the character of Javert, who is a villain without being a villain. Hugo will not let us disrespect this man's commitment to law and order and his commitment to an ethos, right? He has a worldview, and he is he's a perfect foil for Valjean in his commitment to it. And the situation is no exception. I think it's really cool.
If we were in doubt also about his representation of justice, if we were in doubt about Javert being the fleshing out of justice, look no further than the chapter title of 9 on page 1301. Marius seems dead to one who is a good judge.
Yeah.
And if you read the chapter, Javert is the one who is considered a good judge. I think he would say that of himself, but also I think that Hugo would say that of him. His purpose in the story is to be a good judge. And here he is waffling all of a sudden. He's
waffling about Valjean.
Right.
But he's also getting it wrong.
Yeah.
Because Marius
it's all very
is not
ironic.
dead.
Well, except for if you continue on with what you guys are saying, if we allow this to be a symbol or a metaphor, yes, he is, right?
Right.
Marius is dead. He's been buried. He is condemned. And yet, Jean Valjean's person, and it's in Javert's power, actually, his life is in his power. If Javert had not allowed Jean Valjean to take him back to his grandfather, it's very possible that Marius would have died.
And it's also, he was one of the combatants at the barricade, and Javert recognizes him.
Yeah. So before the law, he is dead too.
Right. So the first thing that happens then, if we're taking that rubric, is that Javert joins Valjean in his fatherly perspective on Marius.
Yeah.
And basically says, there's been enough killing of little boys today.
Mm.
Let's get this kid home. And takes him home to his grandfather. We need to talk about the grandfather too. My goodness, what a scene.
Oh,
But
man,
so he takes him home, and then Valjean says, can I go home? And he doesn't mention Cosette, but basically, I need to set some affairs in order. And Javert allows that as well before the ultimate sacrifice of his vision of justice, when he, without saying anything, quietly leaves Valjean to live his life and goes away.
And every word he said to him in the whole scene, Hugo is careful to tell us, is said in a tone of respect.
Yeah.
Javert now has a tone of respect for Jean Valjean that I'm sure rankles even as he's speaking it. But I hope that we get more on the internal workings of Javert's transformation.
Oh, I feel sure that we will. Don't you?
Oh, yes. There's
Do you think
also
Hugo's going to pass up that kind of opportunity to bloviate?
bloviate. What a great word. Did you guys notice another shout out to the musical that whenever the police force is mentioned, it is in association with stars?
Yes.
The shining star of the police force is underground, glowing with a small light, you know? Jean Valjean comes out into nature and he looks up and his soul is starry, and Javert appears behind him in that moment. It's, stars in their multitude.
Scarce to be counted.
A representation of justice, yes,
Filling the darkness
and
even.
the eternal, but also a representation of the police force and Javert specifically.
Yeah,
I'm excited to see how that metaphor turns out. Yeah.
They are the sentinels. Anyway.
Just keep going until someone laughs, Ian. Just
I
that's the
can't
rule.
help it. I can't help it. It started in my mind and now the song is playing.
I'm sorry.
Okay, let's wrap this up with a quick a good cry on behalf of the whole crew at the response of Marius's grandfather to Marius coming home.
Oh,
was that not utterly heartrending in all of the possible ways?
Yeah, it was so heartrending.
And just also finally, there's been so much misery and all of these, there's been so many characters from the very, very beginning, starting with Fantine, who have had no earthly rescue. We have hope for their spiritual rescue, but they suffer on this earth, and that's kind of all there is for them in the material realm. But finally, there's this man who does not he does not deserve redemption of any kind in his relationships. He holds horrifying opinions about the way one should live one's life, and yet there's this moment of grace for him, and it's just so powerful. At long last, somebody is getting in the land of the living, someone is getting something returned to them.
Everything sad is coming untrue.
Yeah.
For the grandfather.
Whew. Yeah, I can't talk about it. I just cried the whole time.
I know, it's so beautiful. I also think that Hugo plays the scene very delicately. If the grandfather had walked back in, and there had been no chip on his shoulder anymore at all, it wouldn't have been as powerful. But he can't decide in his grief whether to maintain his position of political disagreement with Marius and frustration over the youths and how the youths are acting, right? Or to weep over his grandson. And what comes out is this garbled mixture of the principles that he has claimed as his personality and his growing self-knowledge, right? And it's all accusatory towards Marius until the very, very, very end. But more or less what he says is, I have been a fool. And now that I know it, you have left me in it. And I didn't get the chance to tell you, of course, everything I have is yours. Of course, I will obey you. This house is yours. You're the master of it. Tell me what to do. My time has passed me by, more or less.
Yeah. He even says, I've never loved anyone like I loved you. I've had no amour like you. Yeah. Which I thought was so beautiful, given that his whole reputation in the story, in his own mind,
is as a philanderer.
A catch in the city. And he basically says, I've never loved anyone like I love you. I'll do whatever you say.
Oh, just So powerful and wonderful.
And when Marius wakes up, he's finally able to communicate it, which has been the problem all along.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That when it comes to it, he's never been able to actually say that to Marius, but he does this time.
Yeah.
So good. Did you
Absolutely
guys
awesome.
notice that there are a couple times in this section where Hugo makes reference to Dante and the descent into
Yes.
hell?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I just before we start wrapping up, I think it's powerful that it's not just it's death and resurrection, which is a very prominent theme in this book, but also there's a descent into hell, and then in Dante it's the reversal, right? Coming to the bottom is coming to the top again, and I think all of our characters are experiencing that right now.
Except
Oh, I love that.
Cosette.
Well,
Who is
Who
very
walks on
happy
clouds of
today
glory.
because her sheets are so white.
So white. Her sheets are so white. Her pretty little bed is so white.
So annoying.
Man, oh man. Well, no doubt we will get some more of
Beatrice
Cosette.
figure for sure. And
Yeah, if we're going with the Dantean image, she's Beatrice. Faux show.
Oh my goodness. Well, you guys, thank you for walking with me through the filth of the sewers.
We did it.
We
It
conquered
really
the sewers.
wasn't painful at all.
No, I thought it was pretty good actually.
I really
Yeah.
enjoyed this section.
I can see why it's the thing people remember when they read this book.
But
Well, it's memorable.
it is hard to avoid the poop jokes.
I didn't avoid them. I'm sorry, everyone. I couldn't.
Someone had to do. Again, I'm surprised it was you and not me.
I know. Just here to keep things interesting, you guys.
Oh, my
Switching it up.
goodness.
You're welcome for your new vocab words.
Yep.
Cloaca and tergiversation. Nope, that
my
wasn't it.
algorithm.
No, yeah, it is.
My Google algorithm is going to be wild for a while.
Yeah.
The words that I have had to look up in the past 24 hours.
You're going to start getting ads from medical programs.
Google's like, are
IBS.
you okay?
Yeah.
Blink once for yes.
If you have a leaky cloaca, here are some home remedies. Okay, this has gone on long enough. This is the How to Eat an Elephant Cruise signing
So
off.
great.
Thank you for joining us. And until next time, friends, bon appetit. I guess.
Ew.
Happy digestion.
Bye, guys.